Hey everybody, it's Leilani, the author of the upcoming young adult paranormal romance Devil's Heir, and today we're going to be talking about, is hiring a developmental editor worth the money? So if you've been following me on my self-published journey to self-publishing Devil's Heir, you will know that back in April I actually hired a developmental editor to help me through the 1,000 word version or draft of Devil's Heir, and so it took her a month to do the 1,000 words, so about April 1st, and she gave it back to me a couple days before the end of the month, so it doesn't really matter. I think it was like April 27th though. So it's taken me up until basically now to work through all of the edits. Today is June 15th. I finished my version, I guess, or I don't even know what draft I'm on at this point, before I gave it to my sister who acts as my critique partner. So she's gonna have it for a couple weeks, then I'm gonna have it back for a couple weeks to incorporate her notes and the notes that I did when I printed out the entire manuscript. If you follow me on Instagram, which you totally should, I will leave it down here, then you will see that I printed out the entire 300, I think it was like 385 page manuscript, and I read it in its physical form, which was so satisfying, by the way, but not the point. Yeah, so I'm going to work through my edits and my sister's edits before it goes off to its copy editor, but that will be a separate video. So for now, let's talk about my experience working with a copy editor. So I'm sure you're wondering, who did I use and how much did I spend? So let's start from the beginning. So most authors will probably tell you to start looking for an editor on the EFA website, which stands for Editorial Freelance Association, something like that, but I'll leave the link in the bio, where basically you can put in all of the categories, exactly what you're looking for, whether you're looking for a beta reader, copy editor, developmental editor, whether it matters to you if they're in the same state as you, etc., and start there. Or you can go to Reedsy, which is also a very popular place to look for an editor or a cover designer, marketer, that type of stuff, where you just put in your project and people will actually contact you with rates. And so I did that, and it was very expensive. Not to find out. To find out was free, obviously, to use those websites. But to find an editor is incredibly expensive, which I completely respect. For most of these people, just happen to be women, for most of these women, these are their full-time jobs, and I completely understand. They put in a lot of work. My editor took an entire month to go through my manuscript, so if you're only doing 3 to 4 manuscripts a month, you got bills. I get it. I completely get it. But as someone who is a newbie and wasn't really sure what this was going to be all about, I took my exploring elsewhere. Though I will say that I actually did find my editor on the EFA website. So basically the moral of the story is look everywhere. I highly recommend creeping on other self-published authors. So what I would actually do is, when I was reading a book that I really enjoyed, I would look in either the acknowledgements or in the front matter to see if they happen to list their editor, and then I would go check them out or creep on people's Instagram, slide into others' DMs, etc., and just keep your options wide open. I was incredibly lucky to find and work with Natasha from Rare Bird Editing. Again, I will put that on the screen and down below. So the way that they do it over at Rare Bird Editing, because it is a 2-woman team, Natasha is the developmental editor, and then there is a copy editor, which I will be working with later. So the way that they do it is, instead of doing it by word, which is what a lot of editors will do, so for example, they'll charge you like 0.006 cents per word for a specific type of editing, and then that's how they charge you. But instead, over at Rare Bird Editing, what they'll do is they'll actually charge you by the 1,000 word. So for example, it'll be like $7 to $10 per 1,000 words. So when they give you, or when you give them like the first chapter for a sample edit, that is when they'll give you the estimate. So that's how I did it. And so I was charged $800 for the 100,000 word draft that I sent her, and she does actually offer a 1-round or 2-round edit, but I decided to just go with just with 1 round, because again, this was my first time working with an actual editor, so I just wanted to make sure I knew what was up, or just kind of, you know, tiptoe into this self-publishing world. And so again, if you watch other authors' videos about what type of editors are necessary, they will tell you that a developmental editor is kind of just up to you, because it is focused on storyline edits. So their job technically isn't to go in and do all of the line by line grammatical kind of stuff, but they're going to look at the bigger picture and help your story grow. But you can absolutely substitute that by doing maybe a couple round of beta readers. So again, if you've been following me from the beginning, I actually only did 1 round of beta editing, because that's just how my timeline worked, and I knew that I wanted to do an actual developmental editor just to fully experience self-editing, or just to just to do it from a professional, because obviously it is much different to get feedback from, you know, friends and family versus someone whose career is all about novels. So like I said, I got the book back in about less than a month, and spoiler alert, it was 100% worth every penny that I spent her. She did so much work, a lot more work than I even expected her to. So what she ended up sending me after that month was my actual document, which had inline edits and comments on the side, and then she sent me her editorial letter, which I thought was really nice. She actually wrote me like a small little letter to start out with, basically. Just thanking me for choosing her to work with. But then again, she also gently basically told me that writing is really hard, you guys. It is super hard, and this is coming from someone who's, you know, wanted to be a writer most of her life, and actually got my degree in creative writing, and this is like the hardest thing that I've ever done, and this is what, you know, I spent $30,000 at uni studying. So she basically broke it to me like, don't feel bad, because she knew this was my first time obviously working with an editor, and she broke it to me and said, you know, don't take anything too hard. All of her suggestions are just that, they're suggestions. I don't have to change anything that I don't want to, but just the fact that writing is a craft, so don't worry, because your first book is never going to be as good as your 10th book. So I really appreciated that, because I'm kind of an compliment sandwich kind of person. I don't really take criticism too well, not that I get angry or anything, but it just makes me like a little cringy, you know, before I have to deal with it. So I really appreciated that. And then she sent me in that letter, so it was another like huge document where she basically broke down every single chapter. Let me pull it up for you guys so I can show you. So what she ended up doing was she did some general advice, broke it down to the first line of the book, which is the hook, the first pages, the manuscript overall. She gave me some notes on plot, structure, and pacing. And then what she did was what she calls chapter scene sequence breakdown. So for every single chapter and section, so like 1.0 is chapter 1, but 1.2 if you have like a dash 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 for like a separate section. What she did was what she provided to me was something called goal, conflict, disaster, reaction, dilemma, and decision. So she broke that down for every single chapter, said what those 5 categories were, or if there wasn't anything, she suggested how to add those in. And then just throughout, so about like 25% of the book, 50%, 75%, she did another smaller generalization of her thoughts and notes. And then, what else? And then in the last couple pages, she did a section on world building, style, my used words, some dialogue suggestions, etc. And so this document, this doesn't include the 385 pages that she actually went through, was almost 30 pages. So this is 30 pages of notes, and I couldn't even fathom doing that. Like, I hate editing my own book, yet editing anybody else's book, and it would just be enough for me to go through and do the line edits and the side comments for somebody's book, yet do an entire separate 30 pages. And again, it was her job, and she made it very clear to me that this, you know, she's only here to help me, which sounds obvious. This is why you're hiring somebody, right? But I mean, it could have been like a gamble, hiring someone who is about like half of the cost as somebody else. So you might expect, not that the work would be half as bad, but you just wouldn't expect to get everything that Natasha gave to me. And I am forever grateful, because just within like the first couple pages or the first chapter, I already knew that this book was going to be much more than what I could do it by myself. So basically, just to wrap up this conversation between you and me, do you need a developmental editor? Yes and no. So I would say if you're a newbie writer such as myself, or if you're writing your first book, I would highly suggest getting a developmental editor just to find out the type of writer you are. So for example, I quickly realized that in my head, obviously as the voice of the character, you want to make sure that you're viewing everything surrounding her and providing that to the reader, right? So what I realized is I would do a lot of things like, Calla saw Lily do this, or Calla saw Daisy shake her head, or Calla noticed blah 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 blah, instead of just Daisy shook her head, Lily walked away, Luke said this. I would say like, Calla saw this, or Calla whatever, which would actually be I saw this, because it is in first person, not in third person, but you see what I'm saying. And or speech tags, for example. I would write a lot of speech tags, or I would say things like, I shook my head, no, actually I thought that this, or, you know, Daisy crossed her arms over her chest, no, I hate that idea. You know, things like that can actually be taken out. So she helped me a lot with the pacing of the novel, because a lot of the times those kind of are fillers. So what I ended up doing was, if I had a lot of dialogue between two characters, I would add in those pieces of action. So, you know, shook her head, rose her brow, etc. When really, if it's just two people talking, you can just have a normal conversation. If it's something that's going to be really important, like, you know, she stabbed her or something, obviously that's a piece of action that you want to include, and then continue the dialogue. But for the most part, you can kind of just put in the dialogue the reader doesn't really care or doesn't really need to know. So for that, for summarizing all of that, I would say, again, if you're a new writer, I would highly recommend getting a developmental editor so that you can get more of an idea of your own writing style, because I didn't realize that I was really doing those things. So as I was working through my new edits from her suggestions, my writing is definitely much better. And actually, my critique partner / sister, since she's reading it right now, one of the most important scenes, I guess I can just tell you guys, chapter 3, something really cool happens, or something really important happens, and she read the first draft that I ever wrote, and she said that it is so much better, and she felt like she was actually in the story with Calla. So will I be getting a developmental editor for the next book? I am not entirely sure. So again, that's why my answer was both yes and no. I am hoping to obviously get a better understanding of my timeline for my release, so hopefully I can do multiple rounds of beta readers instead of hiring a developmental editor. But since I actually had such a fantastic time working with her and I really enjoyed her insight, who knows, I might end up going back to her. But for now, I can say that I had a fantastic experience with Natasha from Rare Bird Editing. So Natasha, if you're seeing this, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And if you guys go check them out and end up using, tell them that I sent you, because you get some money off, and then I might get some money off if I end up using them again, which, you know, as an author, you really gotta clench your pennies, guys, because it is very expensive. So if you have any more questions about my experience with a developmental editor, just let me know. Comment below, email me, slide into my DMs on Instagram. I'm always over there, and I will definitely be doing another video like this for the copy editing experience, which I will also be using Rare Bird Editing for that as well. So I'll give you a summary of not whether you should do it, because you should do it. Everyone needs editing for, you know, grammatical stuff like that, but just my experience overall and the things that I learned and hope will take with me for the next book. So as always, guys, thank you so much for watching. I'm so sorry that I was gone for a while, but obviously I've been very busy editing, and I'm doing some pretty cool stuff in the meantime. I'm working on revamping my new website, getting some marketing stuff coming up, so I hope you guys are excited, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.